another episode of the Hood Health Report. It's your girl KV
and Celine.
And today we are going to talk about environmental disasters. Lately in the news, and even as late as today, Celine informed me, there have been so many environmental disasters as far as train derailments that emit all of these different chemicals and hazardous materials and other things, power plant accidents that just really puts the environment at risk as well as the community. So today we're going to dive into some of those. So the first environmental disaster that we want to talk about is an Ohio train derailment that happened last month. So the article we're going to jump into from the Washington Post: before Ohio derailment, Norfolk Southern lobbied against safety rules. So this article was really crazy to me because you know how like karma came quick, you know what I mean? So it's like you were just saying, oh, we don't need all these new safety regulations, and boom.
The article that we covered this week was the Ohio sues Norfolk Southern over East Palestine train derailment. It's covered by the Washington Post. And what I found very interesting about this article is that it was a 58-count lawsuit that was filed against them, and it's for damages that go up to $75,000. This is going to affect the air, the water, and the soil. A lot of residents are talking about it, and they are just wondering how safe it is to drink the water and also breathe the air, because soon after this explosion or thing happened, the derailment of the train happened, the town basically said that they were good to drink the water, they're good to breathe, but it was like a huge thing, because I'm not sure if y'all have seen the picture, but there was a huge picture going around. Maybe we can insert the picture, but it was like a explosion. Like, it looked fake. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. It's like it didn't even look like it was like real life happening in the United States, but yes, it was like it looked like an explosion, like out of a movie, almost. That's how I would describe it. And then the people who work there and live in the area blame the derailment on like, you know, the railroad company, because a lot of the stuff dealing with the railroad company isn't updated. So a lot of these the ways that the railroad is set up hasn't been updated since like the 1800s. It's the same exact system that they've had for so long. What I did find also interesting about the article is that the Norfolk Southern CEO, he apologized, and he seems to be very understanding and willing to provide financial support. And he's already aided $21 million to clean up the efforts. But I'm like, well, of course you're going to aid all that money, because it's a noticeable thing. Like, if you look up the pictures, you're going to see that this is going to cause some kind of commotion. People are going to be affected by it.
A lot of people were displaced from their homes, so there has to be money to give to those people, as far as whether they're renting another house, renting an apartment, having to get hotels, as far as the environment goes, cleaning up or rebuilding certain things. It's a lot of money that goes into the cleanup of something like this. And after the February 3rd train derailment, 3 days later, they had to release a toxic plume of chemicals that they used to avoid potential major explosion. And the clouds traveled as far as neighboring Pennsylvania. So that was another major concern for the residents, because we're not sure what's in all of these chemicals. You know, these chemicals that you're adding on later is going to prevent a fire, but does it cause something else? Does that mean it's safe to breathe? So I can definitely see why they would be getting sued, because you know, these things should be taken care of. The residents of these communities should not have to face something of this nature. Which brings us to the next article: before the Ohio derailment, Norfolk Southern lobbied against safety rules. So there was a meeting that took place where the government wanted certain things in place, as far as a minimum of 2 to 3 people to, be a conductor on the train, because they would need multiple people to stop throughout the train for it not to become an accident of this proportion. So 2 to 3 conductors on a train would prevent a collision of this magnitude, because they would be able to stop the different cars before they all crash into each other. So if it's 149 cars per train, I would would think that at least every 50
50.
cars,
Yeah.
honestly, there should be a conductor to stop that train so that first 50 cars get destroyed, hazardous materials, the next 100 don't have to go up in flames as well. So crazy enough, of course, as with most things that we're dealing with these days, Obama administration had set forth a lot of regulations that put in these minimums and required some different safety regulations, such as auto stop brakes on the train rails. And the Trump administration rolled everything back and took everything back. So now the Biden administration is fighting to get all of these regulations and rules back into place. And this article was very critical of the industry, the railroad industry, because it talks itself to be, a safer alternative than, trucks on the highway emitting all these gases and things of that nature. But then if we have derailments of this magnitude as often as we're having them, I feel like we would rather just have the trucks on the road emitting, the poison that we're used to. Just saying. Yeah, but that's the truth of it. That's a very shocking number. Because I think they said they had many more trains, but they cut it all the way back to a few. And so it was covering millions more miles a year, a decade ago. And to still have higher numbers than that, it was pretty shocking. So that's why they want to get this new technology in there to ensure that all of the cars can stop at the same time, or if there is sensors on the tracks to notate when they're overheating. They also mentioned that Norfolk Southern had laid off 5 or 6 people, and those people were track maintenance people. So they were the people that were in charge of reading those alerts when the overheating happened, or if something happened, if there was any type of danger on the trails, they were the ones to read those signals. And the article pointed to the fact that overheating could very well be why the reason this happened, why this derailment happened. So I could definitely see why the people of this town are suing, because that's a direct conflict of those actions and they should have to pay. People probably, we never see the fallout of this until years to come, because we don't know what that air quality is going to be like. We have to, conduct studies in 5 to 6 years to see if those children that grew up in this area still have the same levels of whatever toxins have been emitted as people in neighboring towns who may not have been affected. So that's the only real way we'll know. And like I said, it'll probably be at least a decade before we really get into it. So they definitely use that to their advantage as well, because if there's no immediate effect, if there's no immediate fallout, you don't, your water's not red or yellow, you don't see the danger. So after a while, you might just forget and believe what they said, that, there's no danger.
Oh, it's fine. Yeah, you're good.
It's fine. Oh, yeah, nothing. But then, you start to see that everybody in this town has asthma, or everybody in this town is getting ulcers or some type of respiratory illnesses. So it's definitely something to be aware of.
Yeah. A lot of people are concerned about their health problems, about their animals, and then the property devaluation as well. So
yeah, I did see that. The property devaluation is a major one, and they did say they saw animal deaths. Yeah,
they have seen animal deaths. So that's something that is concerning them, because those are immediate things that are going to happen in the next couple of years, weeks, months. So I think that is something that is going to affect people, especially if you're in the area. And then they also said that it's more of a small town. So it's not a major city, but at the same time, the town itself is going to see a whole bunch of, fallout from this derailment. Switching gears a bit, we're going to talk about the Montana mining town incident. Some people in this Montana mining town are worried about the dust. Additional studies indicate that potential problems such as elevated levels of metals, including aluminum and copper are in the area, and traces of arsenic and lead are in the ground, and they want more testing done. The recorded emissions meet the federal standards. However, the population levels exceed public health safety from the World Health Organization, also known as WHO. So the EPA's maximum annual average for the finest particles in this concentration are micrograms per cubic meter. And the WHO's limit is 5. So for EPA, they're saying 12 is the number, but WHO is saying 5. And with that big difference, it's allowing the Montana mining companies to be able to pass through the federal government and say that their standards are below what they should be. However, these high levels being at 12 instead of being at 5 can cause a lot more copper and aluminum to be in the air, and also traces of arsenic and lead, and they're not even doing anything about it because they're saying that it's still underneath the federal standards. The manager for the environmental affairs for Montana Resources says that the company goes beyond what's required to mitigate dust. So basically, what's going on is the mining company is set up right outside of the town. However, since there is wind, the dust particles do travel to the town. So they get like a byproduct basically of, the dust being carried from place to place. And he's saying that they're doing everything they can to mitigate the dust from coming into the town. However, they don't feel like, the town doesn't feel like that's enough that's being done. They feel like there should be more being done to keep the levels from even reaching those levels that they are currently reaching.
So one major report from this article was that one of the residents of the town had actually had her child's lead levels tested, and that they did show that her lead levels were elevated. Now, that could be from a lot of different factors, but it also could be from the Montana mining town. So she mentioned that she hadn't got the exact results back yet. So, that's kind of still out there, but I'm sure it'll definitely be a push for, research studies to be done in this town, since I think they said it was a century's worth of mining was done in this town. So if there is some type of pollution and things to be there, I think now would be the time to really read those.
Thing I can think of that the article covered was somebody else had a different opinion about it. They also were like, I don't think anything should be tested just because this is how we make our money. Like, this is a small town. Most people that are there to mine, or their families have been there to mine. So if you go in trying to change regulations as far as the federal standards and stuff of that nature, then you're going to be affecting people's livelihoods. And I think that was a good argument. But at the end of the day, is it worth it at the end of the day? Because you're saying you're doing this for your livelihood. However, your livelihood is mostly affected by your health. So,
and it can affect them in ways that's not, immediately evident. So they don't even understand the dangers that they might be in. But yeah, it did have that piece of this article where they mentioned that people take pride in their town and take pride in being this mining town because they produce as much as 1/3 of the world's copper supply. So that's something to be proud of, but at what expense?
Yeah, exactly.
So you're known for this thing, and this is how your family can typically make their money and do well in the town. But is it affecting you health wise in a bad way?
Yeah, the long run, the longevity of it.
Yeah, like in the last article, it's a lot about the children, seeing how the children are taking in some of these chemicals, getting their levels tested, if they're suddenly developing asthma or other respiratory illnesses. These could be the reasons why. If they start to have like rashes or things of that nature from exposures, you just never really know what could happen. So it's like I said, it's one of those things you got to keep your eye on. And speaking of kids, this next article, kids want to put Montana on trial for unhealthy climate policies. So in this article, it mentions how the kids in the Montana town, they're worried about their future. There was a flood that happened that washed away a lot of the park, a lot of the bridges, it ravaged the roads, and their use of fossil fuels in the town, it puts the town at risk. And so Their lawsuit asserts that Montana, by fostering fossil fuel as its primary energy resource, is contributing to a deteriorating climate and violating the children's right to a clean and healthy environment guaranteed by the state's constitution. By doing so, the lawsuit alleges Montana is interfering with the children's health and safety and happiness. So they mentioned that some other kids in the towns, like there's this organization, our Children's Trust, that goes forward and files these type of lawsuits. There hasn't been much luck in the past because they use the fact that there's no immediate danger or no immediate threat to their advantage. So if the kids can't immediately point to something and say, this creek has green slime because of the mining town and we're getting water from here, so there's no immediate thing that we can point to and say, this is our danger. They can skate around it or put it off for some time. So they've been back and forth with this lawsuit a bit, but it wasn't totally, what's the word, like pushed against? It wasn't totally dropped. Some of the cases could still be valid and tried in court, and I think it said June of this year. It'll be going to the Supreme Court to see about if they can really sue the town about their futures and the environment there. Anything to add?
No, because you kind of hit on everything that I would have mentioned about it. The only other thing that I felt like was interesting was when they were filing the lawsuit, that they made sure they included the children, because this is a different, like the way they could go about it is, since it's affecting kids, it's totally different. So I know they're hoping if this goes well that they will be able to use the same kind of structure to file other lawsuits in other cities that also have things that are environmental dangers that are caused and that affect kids. So it'll be interesting once it goes to trial to see how far it goes, if they're able to do anything. The other thing that the article mentioned was that, like you said, not pushback, but they keep on saying that they need more time. So like they're able to push it off and get more time. So I think they started like earlier in 2021 and they haven't got much accomplished in 2023.
And here's a direct quote, like what I just mentioned. Our Constitution does not require that dead fish float on the surface of our state's rivers and streams before its far-sighted environmental protections can be invoked. So, like I said, we shouldn't wait till the rivers are filled with slime or,
The fish are dead.
There's a spill that goes into the river. We shouldn't wait for these things to happen. We should work to prevent them from happening.
Be proactive.
Being proactive. So that's why the kids are suing this town, because they can foresee, what is to come for their environment. All right. This next article, cleanup of radioactive water leak ongoing at Minnesota nuclear plant. So, if there was a potentially hazardous power plant leak in your community, would you want to know right away, or would you, want them to flesh out the risk first and then tell you?
Y'all need to tell me today, right now. As soon as y'all find out, let me know.
Yeah, some people feel that way. Some people feel that, let's not excite the public and get people all up in arms. Let's just wait to see what will happen.
What are we waiting for?
What are we waiting for? Something bad to happen.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was about to get at. Are we waiting for the children to come out with 3 ears? Like, what exactly do they want to happen before they take these measures? So this nuclear plant leak included 400,000 gallons of radioactive liquid. And they say it didn't quite reach the Mississippi River, but the town that it got to was about 30 miles out from the Mississippi River. So, if you know anything about soil and dirt, it absorbs. So who's to say that this chemical spill didn't reach the river in some way? So Excel Energy is the company that runs the plant, and they claim that the leak had been fully contained. But the article later goes on to say that roughly 1/4 of the spill, But the article later goes on to say that roughly 1/4 of the spilled tritium has been recovered so far. So if it's only 1/4 that's been recovered,
where's the rest of it?
Where is the rest of it? Where is the rest of it? And like, I guess we should watch a video on this or something, because I'm like, how do you fully recover a spill? It's not like, Play-Doh where you can just pick it up and plop it in the back of a truck.
Or a solid. It's not even a solid. This is liquid.
Yeah, so that's one concern. Excel Energy is the company that runs this plant, and although they stated that the leak had been fully contained, it later goes on to say that roughly 1/4 of the spilled tritium has been recovered. So my first question is, where is the rest of it? And exactly how are they recovering these hazardous wastes if it's a liquid? It is a pure liquid. They're calling it radioactive water. So how are you recovering this water before it gets into the soils, before it, treats the size of the buildings, or whatever it's touched is now radioactive? So that's my main question about it. The leak was first discovered in November, but state officials did not notify the public until March.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people were upset about that because they felt like they had a right to know.
I personally feel like they had the right to know. There's no reason that it happened in November and they're just not finding out in March. Even if it was contained, it still should be public knowledge that they should know what's going on in their community.
Because it could directly affect people's families if they have children who may have special needs, or as far as their health care. And now we have this radioactive substance about the town that could possibly be spreading through the soil or the waters. That could be, a big effect on people's health. So yeah, I agree. People should know about these things. And
because I think about myself when I was a kid, I used to be outside making mud pies. Like I'd be out there just messing with the mud and stuff like that. You don't know what you're touching. Like I feel bad for the kids.
So although they stated that the leak poses no dangers to the community, they claim that they will let people know if that ever changes. They're now considering above ground storage tanks to store the contaminated water, and they're also looking at ways to treat, reuse, or dispose of the contaminated water.
And I had so many questions about this because first of all, I'm thinking to myself, they're saying they're going to hold it above ground and it's going to just be out. So I'm like, what happens if it somehow spills? Like, what if there was a tornado or something and then it's just like everywhere? And like, you just don't know what's going to happen with that stuff. And then what else did they say? What was the other part of it?
To reuse it. They want to treat, reuse, or dispose of it. They're trying to figure out the best way.
Yeah, like how do you dispose of something that's radioactive? Like really dispose of it? How are you going to treat it? It's just a lot coming up because I'm just like,
we reuse
that's what I'm saying. Who's using it?
Where is this radioactive water going? I don't want the water used in the clothes that we make.
No.
The bottles that we use and any of the things that are in my home. I would not want retreated radioactive water to be a thing in the ingredients. Like, it's crazy that that's something we have to think about now.
Yeah, like I'm looking at the back of my bottle and it's gonna say radioactive retreated water. What?
And then people try to take that as like, oh well, that's being environmental because we gotta figure something else out. I get it that these power plants are needed to get the energy flowing, to get certain things made. So yeah, there will be some radioactive waste, but we definitely have to come up with better ways to dispose of it.
I would love to know how they plan to dispose of it. I really would like to know, especially since they're so secretive about like even cleaning it up. So like, how do y'all dispose of these things?
And generally, sadly enough, they usually just dump it in a body of water.
Yeah.
It's hidden off in the woods somewhere that nobody really goes through anymore. And, like I said, it just runs back into that same problem. Like, yeah, this might be a desert man-made lake, but if that soil gets radioactive and it spreads, then what? Now the trees are growing with radioactivity, and then say for instance, some animals eat something off the tree. Now these animals are at your doorstep biting on you or something. You just never
don't know.
My mind runs with the
Yeah.
wildest scenarios, and in public health, that wildest scenario usually comes true.
Yeah.
So you just really never know. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see
Very.
what they come up with and if they actually disclose it to the public.
Yeah. So, as far as nuclear disasters worldwide, 2 major accidents have had large amounts of radioactive material that were emitted. And the 2 that usually come to people's mind are, I don't want to butcher these names.
Fukushima?
Yeah, Fukushima, but what's the other one?
Chernobyl.
I knew that. I was listening to it earlier just so I could make sure I could say it correctly with my southern dialect. Okay, so the 2 major accidents that were a large amount of radioactive materials were emitted were Chernobyl in 1986 and then Fukushima in 2011. And they both, for the Chernobyl, did I say it right? Chernobyl? Yeah. Okay.
So Chernobyl is considered the world's worst nuclear disaster. It occurred April 26, 1986, and it was a sudden surge in power during a reactor system test, which resulted in an explosion and a fire. So the wild one about this one was the fact that they knew that this generator needed to be shut down. They knew that the reactor needed to be, what's the word? It needed routine maintenance. So the fact that they did this large, wide-scale test to see how much maintenance it needed, it just sounds like, I know hindsight is 2020, but it just sounds like a recipe for disaster. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, I know my house needs rewiring, but let me go play with the breaker box and see, what all comes on. Like, no, you might blow your house up. And this is what happened in the incidents of Chernobyl. It was a massive amount of radiation that escaped and spread across the Western Soviet Union and Europe. As a result of the disaster, over 200,000 people were relocated from their homes.
Mm-hmm. So the other major nuclear incident was Fukushima, and it was an earthquake and tsunami that struck the eastern part of Japan on March 11, 2011. And the nuclear power plant was hit, and when it did hit, it messed up the reactors in the building, and then from there the cooling system failed, and it had like hydrogen explosions happen. So when that happened, basically the plant was designed to withstand a certain amount of, I guess, energy being produced at that time, and what it was designed to handle, it wasn't able to withstand the new level that was caused from the tsunami and earthquake hitting the building.
So the Fukushima disaster resulted in nearly 500,000 residents having to relocate or evacuate the area to not be harmed by the reactors. Yeah. So it's just crazy to think about, we have all of these advancements and we have all of this technology, but at any time it could backfire and cause harm to our environments or our health altogether. So
yeah, and this happened like in the last, a little bit over the last decade, but it's like it hits home more because this can happen and you just never would know. This is the wrap of this episode. I hope y'all enjoyed the environmental disasters that we talked about. There's currently still happening. There was one that happened today. We didn't even talk about that. But in Philadelphia, they're having to drink bottled water. So just be on the lookout and be safe, everyone. You can follow our page, The Hood Health Report. You can follow it on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. On YouTube, it's KVE Entertainment.
KAYVEEENT is the channel, and you can just see the Hood Health Report playlist. So you can watch us on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. And then Hood Health Pod on Twitter and Hood Health Report on Instagram and everywhere else.
Make sure you like the pages, subscribe to the channel, comment, share, repost, all of the things.
Ring the notification.
Tell a friend, ring the bell,
mm-hmm.
all of that. That's it for today. Bye-bye.
Bye, y'all.